Now, you might have seen me driving this 1971 Gilbern Invader, and recently, that is, since its rebuild, getting it back on the road, and the engine is definitely improving in the tuning state and so on, and I've even been doing some more work on the bodywork. But one thing that became painfully apparent, particularly last weekend actually, on a 50-mile round trip to a country fair at Little Eastern Manor near Great Dunmow, lovely day out by the way, was that unfortunately my 1971 Spax coilovers suspension dampers aren't really up to scratch. As you can see, it does rather make like a boat, which is a shame actually, because I put a certain amount of effort into repainting the shocks and everything. I just fancied the idea of retaining the 50-year-old original coilovers, and they're not rebuildable, so unfortunately they're going to have to go. So I have invested in a set of Gaz coilover shocks from Gasmatic International, based not far from me in Basildon in fact, and a type that I previously used on another car, which was a scimitar, Reliant scimitar. Yeah, so I have got a set of these to put on, which hopefully will do away with this business and its propensity to cause the car to bottom out in the most extreme cases, and you might have even noticed this on the videos, bottom out and hit the ground. In fact, just up the road from here, where there's a speed hump, there's a bit of a gouge where the exhaust actually hit, unfortunately, which was annoying, and yeah, so that's got to happen. So hopefully it won't take me too long to swap these over. It should be a like for like, and the trickiest part is likely to be swapping the springs. I'm going to keep the same springs. The front ones are actually new anyway, but with new shock absorber components, and this is actually the one for the front, and we'll see how easy that is to put on. So the first thing, of course, is to take the wheel off. And I'm jacking it up under the chassis, because I'm just noticing my trolley jack is not exactly on the ground properly. So I'm going to turn it slightly around. That's better. Alright, take the remaining two wheels. Just so happens that the lower mounting bolts are the same size as the wheel nuts, 19. I better put a axle stand under there. It doesn't really at this stage require me to get under the car, but anyway, just in case. Alright then, so I need an open-ended spanner. So, in fact, a ring spanner will do as well. The top one. I'm going to need okay, maybe I can measure that. So as usual, I've used my ratchet tie downs to wrap around the springs since I don't have a particular spring compressor which works with these coils. Right, okay, so that is the original 50-year-old coilover, and well, actually it's not quite as weak as I thought, but it is leaking, and it certainly isn't as good as it could be. After a bit of a struggle, I managed to get this out. It's covered in oil, it's really leaking quite badly, and the spring off, and this is the new one, so I just need to get it in there sufficiently that I can slip the I'm not sure, the upper seat, if I can get the upper seat on. And remember folks, you can never, on coilovers, you can never screw the lower one off the bottom. It doesn't work. It's nearly there, just needs to come, be squished down a little bit more. And of course, as you do it one side, it tends to bend that way. You do it the other side, it tends to bend the other way. But nevertheless, oh, it's not quite there. It may be there, it may be there. No, it's still not quite there. Of course, it'd be a lot easier with a proper compressor, but I haven't got one, because my normal spring compressors won't fit between the coils. Anyway, that's now on, so I need to wind the strap back. Let's put it in a vise, I think. Need something to hold it still. Like that. Here we go. Yeah, I think that's now reached the point. It's now fully in the spring seat, so I can do that and release it. And the same on the other side. And that is now fully released, and I can get rid of the strap. One of the knacks or things to note is to keep the strap certainly not round the far end where it will be trapped by the spring. So as long as you don't do that, you can then pull the strap out, and here we have one rebuilt coilover. That's nice, isn't it? And now, because of course the ride height is not affected by the anything apart from the position of the spring seat, so you can see this one, it's basically about that much from the bottom, so I need to wind up my spring seat adjuster up to about here, and then it will be roughly the same ride height. And it's actually easier to do it like this than it is to do it on the car, so that's what I'm doing here. And it is the upper one that I'm turning, because that's the one that's actually the seat. The lower one is basically a kind of lock nut. And I put my screwdriver through the end so the whole thing doesn't go round, which it could otherwise do. I suppose I could actually just put this straight back on the car before moving round to another corner, since the wheel is off and everything. So these springs are actually new, and the reason they're new is because one of the original 1971 springs, which was hidden inside a plastic cover, was actually broken. So presumably when it was last on the road, it was a bit like using a table or a chair where one leg is a lot shorter than the other. Heaven knows what effect that had on the driving experience, and may well have contributed to the reason it ended up lost, as it were. Got how many? No, still need to go quite a bit further. And I noticed that this one, there's a lot more thread on it than this one, which is only threaded up to about there. So this was almost at the top of its travel, but this one can go a lot higher, so that could be handy. I'm actually wearing my hand out, so I'm going to put a glove on. And these things are called C-spanners. They come in a few different types. I've got two types here that depend on your particular coilover. In fact, I think I might use this one. It's got a slightly more rounded handle, which is also slightly longer, giving more leverage. Yeah, I think probably best to do this off the car, actually, assuming you know where to adjust it to. Are we getting close yet? Fairly close. Couple more turns, I think. Right, let's see how that looks. I'm looking for the space between the bottom there and the spring seat. tiny bit more. Of course, what you really need is a corner weight gauge, which you possibly could improvise, but in rough terms, just count the number of threads, which I am going to do. So, number of threads visible: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Of course, this is in the way now. Alright, perhaps I'll wind that right up and count from underneath it then. Right, let's do that again. Right, counting the visible threads. I'm counting grooves rather than peak because it's easier to put my little pointer into. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 more or less. So that is it. So I can put this back on the car after lunch. Now I have just noticed that comparing the old with the new isn't quite as straightforward as I kind of hoped. So the nominal length of this shock is 16 inches, and so is, well, you might think, certainly it was the closest that Gaz did actually list. If you measure between the holes, is actually closer to 14 3/4. Now this is, it was listed as 16, and yes indeed this is 16, so yes, it could end up being, I think, a bit higher than I had previously thought. So I'm trying to think what the ride height is determined by now. I think I've got to wind this down. I mean, obviously I need to try it on the car, but as I said, I want to do as much as possible not on the car, because this is a lot easier to do. So I'm going to go with, what am I going to go with? So this spring is kind of compressed by the spring seat, and the same was true of this one. But this is longer. When all said and done, this is longer. Only a little bit, but nevertheless. I think I need to wind this down by the difference in length, which looks to me, I'll pull it out to its maximum extent. Actually, I've just realised it wasn't actually fully extended, which this one clearly is. It's got a spring attached. Let's just measure that again. So this is 16, and this is a little bit shorter, but not much. This is approximately 16, but it's more like actually 15 and a half. So it's about half an inch. This one's about half an inch shorter. So I think logic dictates this needs to go down by about half an inch, which is approximately 1, 2, 3, let's say 4 threads. So I'll do that, I think. As I keep saying, it's a lot easier to adjust it here on the bench than on the car, although obviously you can do it on the car. There we are. Let's see what the ride height looks like. Clearly it will have to be fine adjusted, so this is just a kind of approximation at the moment, but anyway, I think good enough to stick it back on the car now. Well, that's one front shock dealt with. Now on to the other one. It has to be said that this is quite hard work. Alright, that's the second front coilover replaced, and yeah, it's a lot better already. So now to move on to the back, which I have not taken off at all since the thing went back onto its suspension about, I don't know, 3 years ago. Well, as I was saying, Gilbern did provide some cutouts in the rear seat area, so you can see the top of the spring mounts here, both sides, with the removable panels behind the seat. Unfortunately, the battery and the camera went flat, so in fact what you can see there are the new ones. So I've already fitted them, and it's interesting perhaps to observe. Get you up here. So these are indeed the old ones. You can see they're covered in oil because they've been leaking, and that one actually isn't too bad. I've got a feeling it depends on, these were lying on their side obviously. Let's leave that leaning against the wall. This one, oh no, this one is a lot worse. So I think you can see the top part there, that's where the fluids come out. So this one is a lot worse than the other one, and that was also true of the front ones. Well, this one isn't so bad. But this one, definitely very, very bad indeed. So different from one side of the car to the other. And you can see the oil. Yeah, you can't. I don't know. It's obviously leaking, but these two, not so bad. In fact, yeah, perhaps you can't see leaking there. But, oh well, two were leaking, two weren't. That probably explains the kind of lurchiness. So anyway, there we go, we've got new ones. So this is now set, because they're adjustable, for bump and rebound. So we now have a much more stable ride than we had before. And that can be tightened up if I wish. from a tuning perspective, I'm going to take care of something which I noticed last time this huge inlet manifold was off, and I'll come to that in a minute. And I've just noticed there's a vacuum hose that I need to remove. There's always another one. Anyway, let's take all of these out. My vacuum hose needs to come off. Right, having taken all the bolts off, at least I hope they're all off. There we go. Alright, so the inlet manifold of the AJ30 has these gaskets. Now these were actually replaced not long ago, and the worry with all these inlet gaskety things is that they leak, and if they leak they let in what is known as unmetered air, or they can do, which then messes up the injection. And I've just noticed I've got a small problem in the corner. Now, done it right. However, it's so although I've done this, these are new gaskets. There's another issue, because the inlet manifold is actually in two pieces. Yeah, there it is. So if I take you over there, you should be able to see, just positioning my torch here, there, you should be able to see these white things. Particularly on that one. And what that is, I think, is the rubber. What I think that is the rubber from the gasket, which is the lower gasket. Very similar to this one, but slightly different. So all these gaskets have got this plastic frame and this rubbery insert. And the upper gasket this is an upper gasket which is a slightly different shape from this one. As you can see, it's got the cutout for the actual fuel injectors, and it's the lower gasket because there are kind of spacer block that goes in between these things, and the injector pokes in, and that's how it all works really. But the lower gasket, the lower gasket I've never taken off, but I think there's a sign of a leak, so I'm going to have to take the whole thing off, I think, and change that lower gasket as well. Now I'm just trying to see what needs to come off. It will take with it the fuel rail, I think. Right, I've never taken this off before, so I'm just looking carefully at where it's fixed on. There's a bolt there. This lower manifold is sandwiched by the upper manifold. But only partly. So I'm going to put those over there. Let's see how many of those there are. They're all the same so far. One I can't get my electric spanner onto, so I'll have to use an ordinary ratchet handle, I think. In all likelihood, this has never been off before. Even these things are a bit bigger. Anyway, I seem to have got away with it so far. Right, and it's moving quite clearly and easily. Now, a fuel rail is fixing this end of it on. Can I release that? So I'll take you in again. And here are the gaskets for the lower inlet manifold. And it was these ones here that I could see kind of tendrils for. Right, I'm going to pull those out, replace them, stick it back together again. Yeah, it's distorted here. Whether it was actually leaking, we will perhaps never know. But anyway, I have a replacement, which I hope actually does fit. It looks pretty promising. That's the upper gasket, and now I've lost the other, there it is, the upper gasket. Quite good because they've got this mounting kind of dowel things that helps locate them all in position. While I'm here, and because number 4 cylinder has been questionable, let's have a look at number 1 cylinder. Ah, look at that. Perfect. Come on, focus. Okay, so also, because someone in the comments queried this, I checked the gap on the spark plug here, and it looks like it's 0.91 millimeters, which according to the books that I've seen, which basically give 1 millimeter near enough, I reckon that's good. So yeah, this is a modern ignition system with a coil-on plug and a whacking great spark every time the engine fires. So that looks good to me. Right, I'm going to have another test drive. 2 reasons. One is that I have fitted new shock absorbers, and the other one is that I'm now running a different ignition map, and this one I copied from another car which runs the same engine with a different intake and so on. It may or may not be the best one to use, but I thought I'd try it, as that one has apparently been on a rolling road, so you never know, it might be better than the one that I have before. So let's see what happens. got as far as this, thanks very much for watching. And in case you haven't already, please do consider subscribing.